I will talk about citizen engagement and in particular about citizen science. So there is a growing evidence, and we have seen example this morning as well, that under certain circumstances, if you do things in the correct way, citizens' engagement can have a lot of positive effects for governance. So more constructing citizen-state relation, delivery of services, enhanced development effectiveness, and this is the World Bank, but OECD basically is saying the same thing, so that citizen participation is essential for building trust. And more, really, in most of the white papers, in a lot of articles, citizen engagement is seen as this panacea that is going to solve all of our problems. And actually, I'm talking about engagement and not participation. And there is a difference. Participation is considered a one-off. I'm voting, I'm sharing my opinion on something, and then I'm off to my own life. While engagement is a way of like building a relation which is long-term and somehow deeper. So the same kind of article, as soon as they say, well, engagement is fantastic, then immediately they say, well, however, it's very complicated. It's not simple to engage people. I actually heard in a question before, citizens are lazy. Engagement is context specific. It really depends a lot from how well you can build this relation. There are problems of inclusiveness. Are you really like including everybody in terms of diversity of age, gender? I mean, if you think that this represents the public, is this really all of the public? And again, same, it's costly, it's complicated, a huge problem of data quality. So there is the hope, and at the same time, there is a complication. And what I would like to discuss today is a methodology, citizen science, that actually has a long history of engagement, has been around for a while, has tried to tackle some of these issues, and it's basically with up and downs, has passed the test of time, basically, and is really coming back now, big time with a lot of excitement. So what is citizen engagement? We are talking about the engagement of members of the general public. We call them citizens with a lot of internal discussion in the community because it has nothing to do with citizenship. It's really like everybody out there into scientific research. And is a form of participation that is really cross-cutting. You have projects all the way from physics, biodiversity, history, linguistics, health, really almost every domain of science. And it also comes in different flavor. Maybe you didn't hear about citizen science, but you heard about, community science, community-based research, crowdsourced data collection. These are all terms that you find and that more or less refer with like some difference, but refer to the same approach. So what does that mean? It means that any moment out there, and actually one of the recent papers mentioned about 750,000 people per month are out there doing something for science, can be collecting data with their smartphone, can be collecting data with like sensors, analyzing images in platform, performing scientific calculations, simply donating the spare CPU of their computers, or co-creating research questions. So going through that process of interaction between the community and the scientist to actually co-create a solution together. And just to be sure, I'm going to just give you a few examples, again, just to give you an idea of the breadth of these kind of projects. More or less, let's say, is a big generalization, but actually works pretty well. You divide the citizen science project in like 2 or 3, let's say, big buckets. One is data collection. These are the projects where people are collecting data, okay, and can Can be active, so people actually going outside with a smartphone. Can be passive, because can be people wearing a Fitbit and decided to donate their Fitbit data for like health research. iNaturalist, you might have heard about this. This is a platform, very successful platform, hosting a lot of projects that are all based on the same principle. With a smartphone, you go out, you take a picture, can be animal, insects, plant, flowers, and the data actually go into the global biodiversity facility. So these are data that are available for scientists and for publication. Just look at the numbers, and these are actually like all the numbers. So really a lot of people doing this in the leisure time. This is Crowdwater, very local, Zurich project. And this is again through an app. Citizens are taking different kind of measurements for hydrology. So soil moisture, level of the stream, presence of absence of streams. Now they're starting to do also, plastic collection. Know the Air You Breathe, another local project at ETH. This was people measuring the quality of air indoors in their apartment with small do-it-yourself sensors. I'm going very fast because really it's just to give you an idea. Health Firm, another is a European project where ETH is one of the members. They are studying fermented food and, trying to encourage people to insert fermented food in the diet. And as citizen science, what they did is they asked people to share their samples of like sourdough of the yeast. And so people just would like fill a questionnaire and send in a sample. So all of these projects, people are collecting data for you. Now, what happens if in fact, data exists? Can be documents, can be pictures, can be images from satellite, can be very different kind of like data. And what really you need help with is with the analysis of such data. So you have projects where, people go to museum, people go to institution, but the vast majority of these projects happen online. There are these platforms. We host one in Zurich where you present people with the data and basically they do some sort of analysis. Of course, with AI, this is like increasingly done by AI. However, even AI needs like a clean set of data to like start the training. And so there are projects where citizens really just create a clean data set for AI. A few examples. This is old, but very famous because of the numbers. And by the way, it was created by an Oxford PhD at the time. And that was then a professor of astrophysics at ETH Zurich for a while. And basically, he was a PhD student having to analyze a lot of pictures from telescopes about galaxies, and he decided to put them out there. And immediately, got this amazing amount of people helping with classification. Is still continuing in a certain form or in another because people are fascinated by space. So this has been and still is one of the most successful projects of this kind. This is a project we had in Zurich, Swiss-German dialects, handwritten document, very niche, but very successful. We just went through different ways and we found people that would transcribe or translate this kind of documents. People analyze clips, video clips. This is another project on our platform. So AI, these are cameras in a big area checking on welfare of pigs. So with AI, basically you select the clips where there are in fact pigs, and then you ask citizens to enrich the information. A lot with satellite images. And actually, this is a GeoWiki. There are a lot of projects that start with satellite images and involve people mainly in ground truthing, but also every sort of activity and recognition of the images. So I'm done with examples. This was really just to give you a little bit of an idea about how many things you can do. And one of the first things that you can think about is, well, I mean, citizen science, you're talking about crowdsourcing. This is like micro tasking. And it is true that citizen science is a form of crowdsourcing. However, there are some key differences. The first one is the emphasis is in scientific research. So you're not crowdsourcing, the new logo of your company. You are doing projects to generate new knowledge. The second one is that the citizens, the non-professional, are actively engaged in the project. So this, as we have seen, can be data collection, data analysis. They're actually doing something. Another very important aspect, they are mutually beneficial. So it's not a project where you give me the data and you are not basically, and this was when somebody mentioned before this, citizens are lazy. No, citizens are not lazy. You simply have to give them a reason to do what you're asking them to do. And if the reason is only your own benefit as a scientist, of course they don't do it. I wouldn't do it. None of us would probably do it. So they have to be mutually beneficial. And so basically it's trying to go beyond this extractive, answer my questionnaire, and thank you very much, where I'm basically just getting information out of it. All of this we have been talking up to now is science, scientific experiments, scientific data. However, one of the advantages of this data compared to data maybe taken by NGOs or local communities is that there is a methodology behind. So these are quality data, and especially at the center in Zurich, I hope I will have time to tell you something at the end about it, is there is a big focus on projects that provide quality data, which means that this data, if you are a scientist, you can use them for your publication. But what if you are a citizen? We were talking about mutual benefit. What can you do with this data if you are a citizen? And what is happening is that increasingly you find, this I think is a Facebook group, you find attitude like this one. So basically activism within citizen science, where you have this data, they are solid data, let's do something with this data, and let's advocate, for environmental law, environmental planning. So citizens really moving very slowly towards law and policy making. And, one of the first things that citizens did and realized that it is very powerful with this data to go to courts, legal courts, because when a government is being slow in doing something, actually you realize that the law can do something. And so there is increasingly this movement, let's say, towards civic monitoring, and then using these evident accepted to push, regulatory changes. And I give you just an example, which is very well known because it was like a landmark decision in 2019. This Formosa case is a petrochemical company in Texas, which were obviously polluting the water, but they weren't providing any data. So this group of citizen scientists basically merged forces with local advocacy, with local community, and they started collecting data. And they provided, evidence that there was, in fact, plastic pollution produced by Formosa. And then there was this sentence where I think they were condemned to pay 50 million to people in the village. So another form, which is slightly different because is more than collecting data, is citizens trying to obtain epistemic representation, which means trying to have the knowledge that they can get and they can study that can come from data or not, again, recognized and used by agency to their own advantage. And this is always, in view of policy change. So if this is not clear, again, an example. This is a long-running conflict in the Wales that was this biomass plant located very, very close to this to Barry, to this town, And so citizens, started to do some work to avoid for the plant to start running. So there was no data because the plant was not running yet. So still they got some data. So they took 2 years of data to consider as a baseline air quality. So if the plant will ever start, they will have this data to compare whatever the air will be to what it is right now. But mainly what they did is they scrutinized, they studied laws and regulations, all of the technical aspects. They were responding to the technicians about very, very specific technical issues. They kept up with the advantages in science, what was happening in terms of energy production and were there alternatives. So really a way for them to be recognized also from the point of view of knowledge production and not only as data provider. Here is another example of a project that was used for policy making. This is in the Flanders, another very famous project where people put out of their window a sensor to measure, air quality. And basically, they managed to produce a map that was at the level of a street. So, I mean, you could have to go to work or from point A to point B, and looking at the map, you could see where to go if you wanted to breathe, less polluted air. And this made so much noise that actually, modified the conversation at the level of the local municipality, of the region. So they were changing in the traffic, there were, changing in the measurements, and these from the Flanders actually was copied and reproduced in a lot of other regions, and especially in the Netherlands that wanted to do something like that, at the national level. So one last application of citizen science data, which you can call it policy or not, but it is citizen science for the Sustainable Development Goals. I assume that you have all heard about that. You may or may not know that for the Sustainable Development Goal, there is a lack of data that is really preventing a lot of the monitoring and the action and the targeting of the action. And citizen science data can contribute to that. There are already 6 indicators among the different indicators and targets where citizen science data have been used to report to the United Nations on different targets. And there is a paper that basically highlights how citizen science data could actually contribute to 76 indicators, which is 33% of the all indicators. So thank you very much for your attention. One more thing about Citizen Science Zurich. So we are a competence center created by the University of Zurich and ETH Zurich with a very generous contribution of the Mercator Foundation. And our job is to help you researchers or you citizens, NGO, communities, to do these projects, to do this collaboration. And we help with the methodology, we help with the tools, we help with community management. We are really kind of a service, which of course goes as a first priority to Zurich researchers, but we actually work with a lot of researchers all over the world. So, feel free to get in touch with us if you have an interest. Thank you.